Welcome to my weekly review. Today is Saturday, August 23rd. You're looking at a daily chart of the Nasdaq, which has been on a strong rally here recently. We had that 27% correction from December to Liberation Day, which is like a 5 month correction, maybe 4.5 month correction. But we've had this strong rally here, this uptrend for the past 18 weeks, and a couple of times it, pulled back near its 21. On August 1st, it pulled back and undercut its 21 right here. And I thought, okay, it's August. We're going to start to, see some weakness and it's going to undercut the 50. But nope, it rallied right back up to new highs of 21,803 on August 13th. Last week, it undercut the 21, caution ahead of the Federal Reserve Jackson Hole speech. And then on Friday, we rallied back above these technical levels. The Nasdaq was up 396 points or 1.88% on Friday, closed at 21,497. This is, on 2% above the average 50-day volume. This was fueled. This past week was all about, the Federal Reserve, and there was caution ahead of this speech. And then once Powell surprised everyone, essentially saying you're going to get a rate cut in September, that the policy adjustment was likely. The market celebrated and, of course, ran up a little bit. I'm still a little cautious here, and I'm going to show you why. The Nasdaq, since the 2022 bear market here, this 11-month bear market, from the end of 21 to October 13th of 2022, we've had five rallies. We've had a 16-week rally, then a correction, a pullback. How about that? And then we had a 20-week rally before we undercut the moving averages. Then we had a 12-week rally before a correction under the 200. And then we had this rally up to last December, where it hit 20,204 and then went into this correction that I just talked about, the 27% bear market. That is a bear market, 27%, whatever you want to call it, downtrend correction, digestion of gains. It was 27%. That's pretty significant. And now we've rallied back up about 47%. But this is 18 weeks. So look at it, an average of these prior four rallies is 16 weeks, and now we're here at 18 weeks. So I think it's time for a little bit of a pullback. I wouldn't be surprised. You could see last week the index pulled back to its 10-week line, which is not the 50-day line. It's a 10-week line of 20,928. And you can see the low was 20,905. So by 23 points, it gave it a little kiss and then rallied back up on Friday, but it's still down for the week, okay? If I go back here, yeah, it's still corrected last week, 126 points, 0.58%. So it was down for the week more than 0.5% on the Nasdaq. I got to point out a couple things here. On Friday, the IWM was one that was really the star of the show. It was up nearly 4%. So that tells you, the IWM is more of a risk on type of index because it's these smaller cap, not established companies, not as established companies. So it's thought of as, a risk index, and it was up 4% on Friday and nearly 3.5% for the week. So that is the star of the show. The SPY, it was barely up last week, 0.25%. You can see it's got this, tight area here, tight pattern. And the Dow Jones, I believe the financial news networks were talking about a high. Yeah, okay. 45,757. So it takes out the old high. So for those 30 stocks, congratulations. Anyway, I don't deal with stocks. I'm just telling you, keep your pants on here. Don't get too damn excited about, one day rally because next week could be something completely different. And it's still August and we still could have, more correction coming. I'm not predicting that. I'm saying, anything can happen in the market. We just take it one day at a time. But of course, with the Nasdaq rallying, you're going to see the Mag 7 performing. And Google was one that I had on my ready list last week. Had a nice move on Friday. They're 3%. They had some good news with Waymo, but only up, 1%, a little more than 1% for the week. But I like it. above 207. I like it above 200, and I'd like to see it trade above 207.05, although there's not much overhead supply. It did trade at 208 on Friday. Tesla was another one that I had on the ready list. It was up nearly 3% last week, still consolidating within a base here, as you can see on the weekly. On the weekly reviews, I like using weekly charts, but I'll go to the daily here because it was scuffling until Friday, and then it bounced 6%, but still consolidating within a base. And I would say that, 338 area is still, a trigger point. Closed at 340. Still has a lot of work to do within the base, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Tesla showing strength here in the back half of 2025. What else we have? Oh, I gotta talk about NVIDIA because everybody else does. They're going to report earnings next week on the 27th, which is what? Wednesday. Undercut the 21, rallied back above on Friday. So I'm not going to go through all the Mag 7 names. I'm just going to go through some earnings reports from last week, going to do some themes, and then close out with some of the stocks that I'm interested in, leading stocks. Last week we heard from Home Depot. They kind of all said the same thing. Home Depot, well, Target's got its own issues, but Lowe's, BJ, Walmart, all those retailers, big box retailers said the same thing, that their earnings were decent, but looking forward, it's a little murky. It doesn't look that great. And but Home Depot still got rewarded, so did Lowe's with their reports. You're looking at 2% sales growth here. Nothing to write home about. Walmart reported last week, and they're talking about, the forward guidance. Their earnings were okay, but the forward guidance is a problem. Target's just a mess. Replacing their CEO, it's about time. They have a ton of issues, namely Costco, Walmart, and Amazon. AS reported last week. Nice response, nice bounce, nearly 12% on Friday there. Breaking out of a base. Let's see what this looks like on a weekly chart. Yeah, that's a nice base there. I guess you'd call that a late stage base, a stage three base. There's your IPO base, and here's your double bottom base, and here's a little flat base. So it's giving you the whole gamut. Now all it needs is a cup with a handle. We don't have one of those, do we? All right. Nice report. MR Sports is kind of a play on China leisure products. All right, what else do we have here? Okay. I did mention BJ, and they reported Friday morning, not a good response. And then UI, this one is one of the top groups here. The telecom infrastructure is the third top performing group, and this is one of the reasons why Ubiquity had a nice response, 31% move on Friday to their earnings report. You can see the accelerating sales growth, triple digit earnings growth. You can see that earnings line heading due north. You can see the breakout of a base here. I would expect higher prices from this stock just based on that. And the last one is NEGG. This one is had a lot of insider buying. I would be very careful with this one if I owned it, because on Friday after they reported earnings, it hit a new high and then reversed lower, and it looks like railroad tracks on the weekly chart here. No more price appreciation, but it did hit a high of 137.84. And if it holds true to form, like what it's been doing, makes a high, then pulls back, and makes a high, then pulls back, makes a high, you would expect next week for it to pull back below 100. Yeah, I would be very careful with that one. It's shown the ability to move a lot, and it's pretty wild stock. So you got to know what you sign up for when you own something like that. All right. I'm I've got good news and bad news, and I'm thinking of both sides here with this rate cut because it is a game changer. When I'm going to go back here since I don't know, I have time. I don't really have time, but 2019 I think will show it. Yeah, this is the let me get this out of here. This is when Jerome Powell, on Christmas Eve, um, the 24th of December 2018. He decided to cut interest rates. Him and Trump were jousting about interest rates, and he decided to cut them, and it led to this big rally, right? We could see something similar to that. with the rate cuts. It is definitely a game changer that they're going to, loosen up, lending. But it could also, we're seasonally in a weak period, so I'm thinking that, both sides, it could go either way. Like that's not saying anything, right? Hey, stocks can go up and they can go down. But I wouldn't say just because they're going to cut rates in September that is automatically just going to rip higher. It might. They did say, I think one of the key things that they said was that their 2% goal is no longer their goal. So 3% inflation will be the goal, I guess, or they won't have a goal. Um, but I just noticed the stocks that were rallying last week, and gold started to rally, the crypto names, some of the financials. Not everything ripped as hard as you would think yesterday. And there were some stocks that, you know, didn't do well at all. Stocks like Reddit sold off on, what was, you'd think everything was ripping, but it wasn't. So I'm going to start with the gold stocks. Barrick, this one had a fantastic week. They reported earnings the week prior, I believe, but man, nice rally here, nearly 9% with Barrick. They sold one of their divisions recently, and it's really taken off ever since. GFI, I mean, gold is the top performing industry group in 2025, and you could just throw a dart at any one of these, and they've rallied for the entire year. Goldfields, another nice move yesterday, 3%. MAG, which is a silver play, nice rally breaking out to new highs. Franco-Nevada, I believe they reported the week prior, but nice cup with handle here, nice 5 day shakeout, then rallied higher. And I could go like just for S's and giggles, just take a look at these gold stocks in 2025, and you could see how many of these have just performed outstanding. All of them. I mean, you could just um, Kinross Gold, GFI. I mean, all of these, right? Just up a lot. Um, yeah, and if I do the silvers, they're up a lot too. So yeah, I mean, any one of these miners are all just trending higher. Do I own one of them? No, I don't. I should. I think we all should just own one of them. I mean, they're just performing beautifully, and it's just consistent performance all year. Buy them on the dips. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out with the gold stocks. I'm going to move on because I don't own gold stocks. That's my bad. I'm an idiot. Go to the financials. SoFi made a nice move on Friday. They had strong earnings report. And pulled back prior to the Powell speech, and then traded over 25 on Friday. Took out that high of 25.11. So that's definitely an area of interest there. Lending Tree, another one just blasting out of a base. This is a weekly review, so got to look at the weekly chart here. Yeah, Lending Tree, that's a thing of beauty right there. $70 after hours, yes. The Rocket, which is buying Mr. Cooper. Another one on the weekly, just strong performance, up 4% last week. And then the Coop, yeah, it was up 4% as well. Those two are kind of trading together because, like I said, Rocket is taking over Mr. Cooper. And then Futu, the Chinese financial, and this one was up nearly 10% last week. They reported earnings as well and definitely had a nice response. All right. And also, I did mention crypto. Crypto is ripping. Last I checked, Ethereum was near 5,000, and it's outperforming Bitcoin now. And this is Bitmine Emergence. This is Tom Lee's Ethereum play, I guess you'd say. But a nice base here, a nice shakeout back to the 21, found support and bounced on Friday. I like this one. And yeah, I did, I think it's going above 60 real soon. It was up 12% on Friday, but it sold off prior and it was down nearly 8% for the week. So I think that shakeout, got rid of the weak hand, so to speak, and I believe it's going to begin to rally higher. It did make that, it's like an earthquake, right? On the Richter scale. Look at this, 161, pull back to 30. So it's volatile. and ran up to 71, had a little shakeout, but that one looks good. SBET, they were talking about on Friday they had bought, they spent a bunch of money buying crypto, and it was up by 16% on Friday, up 5% for the week. But you can see here on the weekly chart, this is still a wide pennant pattern on SBET. Galaxy, which is one that I like. I didn't put it on my ready list last week, but once it traded on Thursday, it traded down to the 50, the newly emerging 50, because it hasn't traded that long. You can see this IPO base. It ran up to what, 33, pulled back to the 50, bounced 7% on Friday. So that's another one that I like in this group. Obviously, if you're talking about, Bitcoin and crypto, you got to mention MicroStrategy, which undercut the 200 and closed right at it on Friday. I'm not thrilled about this action. It's still nearly 1% above its 200. Yeah. If I'm going to own one, I like Robinhood, although it's still consolidating within a base. It's just easier to trade. It's a lot stronger stock. Yet still, in this, if you will, this Darvish box, and it hasn't broken out yet. Why? Well, it had 297% gains from Liberation Day up to the high of 117.70. So it's going to need time to digest these gains. Do I think the run's over? No, I don't. I think it's going much higher, but it's going to take time to digest the gains, to correct, or whatever you want to call it, consolidate. But it will, I'm pretty sure, break out of this box and make a high above that 117.70, call it 118 would be an area that I would be more interested in Robinhood moving out of that consolidation pattern. And oh, two more that I like. I don't know, but I like IREN. They're going to report earnings this week above 21.54. Yeah, I like it. Another one that's just trading in this box, consolidating after gains from 5 to 20. So that's been a four bagger. And then CIFR, another one that I like in the group. Ran up to 710, shook everyone out, undercut the 50, rallied back up. Very strong stock, definitely in an uptrend. And if you look at the weekly, you can see this move from Liberation Day. And I normally don't talk about stocks under $10, but I'm going to make an exception today, yeah, from $1 to $6. So yeah, that's been a nice run for that one. All right, I'm going to get out of the gold, the financials, and the crypto and get to something that everybody loves, the software names. Apple Oven, this one was up nearly 1% last week. I like this move here where it formed this cup, then shook everyone out, undercut the 21. And then rallied a little bit on Thursday and a nice pop on Friday of nearly 6% for Apple and Palantir. You got that Citron, the shorts are after them, but it had 100 and what, I think about 190% move. Okay, almost a three bagger here. Undercut the 50, then rallied back up. Still has work to do. You can see the 5 curling lower, the 21's curling lower. So it's got some work to do, and I think it will get it done eventually. But like I said, big move, takes time to digest those gains. NBIS, if I'm going to own one, I like this one here. Ran up to 75, pulled back to the 21, found support. A much better option than CoreWeave, which is in a downtrend. You can see those moving averages all curling lower, even the 50. So adios muchachos for that one. Oracle, very strong stock, pull back to its 50, found support. So this one needs to bounce as well. But big move here for a large company, 118 up to 260. Thank you very much. So they've had big moves, strong rallies. They need to consolidate, and that's why I think the indexes are going to consolidate, because a lot of these large leadings type stocks, they need to consolidate their gains, including NVIDIA. All right, let's move on to the drugs. Drugs and medical, I'm going to throw them all together here. WGS, this one's been really strong. The drugs have finally, they're starting to move. This one still, I believe, is actionable. 127 is making new highs, a little bit extended from the 5. They're 4%. So yeah, it needs a pullback, but if you want to own a drug stock, This is diagnostic medical services. That's a good one. SUPN. There's a lot of them here. I'm just going to go through them really quickly. Just surfing the five, like Kelly Slater has a fantastic documentary out on Kelly Slater, Make or Break. I just watched the first episode. Dude's 50 years old, out surfing these, 20 something kids, teenagers. It's really he's a marvel. But Kelly Slater loves to surf the five, and this is what Halo's doing. Once again, these are not fly-by-night speculative drug stocks. This thing's got a ton of earnings here. They're going to earn $6 this year and $8 next year. You're looking at, accelerating sales growth, 30, 35, 41%. This is a fantastic stock. And I shouldn't say it's cheap. It's not expensive. I mean, relative to some of these software names, it's a bargain. INSM, they just got one approval, and then the stock's been ramping ever since, just surfing the five. Another Kelly Slater drug stock. RIGL, another Kelly Slater drug stock, just surfing the five here. It pulled back, 2 days last week. Oh my God. No, the 19th and the 22nd, it pulled back 1%. But if you look at these things on the weekly, which I should, you can see this breakout and it's just not stopping. Yeah, it won't flag. You want it to flag a little bit at some point. Maybe around $40 it will, but that's a big move for the wriggle. MDGL, another one that I like. Just breaking out of a base here last week, up 12%. So, a little extended. Sometimes you just got to say, I missed the move there, but I think it's going to start surfing the five. So any kind of a pullback, MDGL looks ripe. And then another, uh, medical research. This is TEM, another one that I like a lot. But, broke out, 9% last week, and now it's a little extended there. Made a high of 85, I believe, on Friday and pulled back. Yeah. So a lot of quality stocks here in this biotech, medical, drug, diagnostic group. All right, another group that is showing well is this leisure services. This is the boomer trade, right? The boomers are taking money out of their, the retirement funds or 401ks or whatever, and they're spending it. They're not leaving it to their kids. There's a breakout from Carnival Cruise Line, CCL. Viking reported last week got a kind of a wonky response, but decent earnings and 22% earnings growth, and it pulled back, undercut the 21 rally back above. That thing looks fine around $60. Yeah, pulled back just slightly last week. And the last one in this group, who do I have? Oh, RCL. Just a lot of groups here I'm going through today, so it's a longer video, but think it's worth noting, some of the strength here in the market. And this is Royal Caribbean showing strength, pulling back to the 50 and bouncing. You want to know where your stocks are finding support. This thing could have crashed through to the 200, but it didn't. It found support at the 50, rallied back up. So that's good information to know if you own that one. GEV, these ones are taking a break. The alternative energy is still the second top performing group. It's the number one ranked group because it's over time, but it made that high of 677, just pull back to 600, gentle pullback, lighter volume. I still think it's fine. LEU had a vicious pullback, undercut the 50, now trying to rally back through that 200 level and the 50-day moving average. Up 5% on Friday. What does that look like on the weekly? Yeah, well, stocks are going to pull back after big runs. That thing had a massive run. And then OKLO was flat on the week, had news Friday or Thursday or Friday. Anyway, pull back to the 50, nice bounce. So it's finding support there. That's good information. And then CEG, Constellation Energy, undercut the 50. So that has work to do to rally back through. That's probably the weakest of those four. Then the construction names, these things have been strong as well. This is Road, ROAD, Construction Partners. Had this, cup-shaped pattern. And then this is an elongated handle, which actually turned into a flat base. Shook everyone out, then popped higher, 12% last week. That's a nice move. Made new highs. Another one that I like in this group is Sterling Infrastructure. This one made a new high of 321. I thought I was smart. I bought it below 300 and it ran up to 321. Then it started pulling back, so I had to get rid of it. But all it did is come back to the 21, found support. Now it's starting to bounce, so it has to get through 300 again. So now you have another opportunity to get it below 300. And then WLDN, this thing's ridiculous. Just this thing was just been on fire. Would it go from 30 to, oh well, 121. Wow. Pull back to 100. I think it held 101. Yeah, 101 was the low last week, and then closed at 111. So just pull back on the weekly to the 4 week line, which is essentially the 21 day line. So the 4 weeks, 5 days in a week, it's 20. I could actually count them on my fingers and toes. All right. And what else we have? Oh, just some stocks that I'm interested in that I like that I may own. This is a DoorDash pullback to the 50. There was a lot of caution last week ahead of Powell, and then so a lot of these stocks pulled back. This one pulled back to the 50. No harm, no foul there. SE, this one consolidated in the base. It's just starting to do the Kelly Slater. It's going to surf the five, I believe, to higher prices. They reported another strong quarter. Who else do we have that I'm interested in? CLS, nice pullback in this one. Undercut the 21. Now it's trying to rally back above. It was up 4% on Friday, but down 3 something percent for the week. And a lot of the stocks on my leading stock list, they were down last week. Down the last couple of weeks. They've just, couple weeks of, digesting gains. That's all. That's fine. CRDO, another one that I like. Pull back to the 50, found support and bounce. So if you got that thing at 100, congrats to you because now it's closed at 114. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, pull back to the 10-week line. So 10-week and 50-day are a little different. You wouldn't think so, but they are. ALAB, another strong stock, pulled back here to the 21. Last week it was down, nearly 4%. There you can see at the 4 week line. So, big move here from 47 to nearly 200. Yeah, 199.47. So, yeah, that's a nice, whatever, 400% gain in a short period of time. So they need to absorb or digest or whatever. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up, except in honor of the great Steve Jobs. I got to go through some earnings reports next week, the NVIDIA reports. Everybody's talking about that, blah, blah, blah. We'll see what they have to say. But it's a big week for the cybersecurity names. This is Okta. They report this thing's been in a hellacious downtrend, trading below its 200. CrowdStrike reports. This is the big one here. It didn't get much pen action from Palo Alto's reports, and they're going to have to deliver something better than red numbers down here. You can see the declining sales growth here in CrowdStrike, 32, 29, 25, 20. That's not a good trend. And it's in a very expensive stock. So you can see it's pulled back here on the weekly chart to its 40-week line, 409, yeah, 409.53, and the lowest 409.31. It's amazing how they just come back almost to the penny. Sentinel One, I don't like this stock. It's, if you're going to own a stock in a group, own the leader, don't own the laggard. So, but they do report next week. Well, there's quite a few retailers. Man, this thing has been hammered. The retail has been really tough. Abercrombie and Fitch reports on the 27th, which is Wednesday, and then Urban Outfitters reports next week. Yeah, pull back to the 50. Yeah, the retail's been tough. And just a couple others. Williams Sonoma, they reported on the 27th Wednesday, after hours. Last night they were talking about tariffs on furniture, so this one's gonna get hit on Monday. MongoDB reports, Dell reports, yes. Dell reports on Thursday. IREN, the one I showed you earlier, this crypto data center play reports Thursday. Definitely looking forward to that. ULTA, it's where my wife spends half her money, reports on Thursday as well. That thing's in an uptrend. That thing looks pretty good. That always reminds me of the Elf. Elf's still here in this double bottom base, not doing much. All right, Marvell, another semiconductor, along with NVIDIA. They report on Thursday. Dick's Sporting Goods reports, and like I said, retail's been kind of tough. And then Affirm, buy now, pay later. They report on Thursday. Anyway, I do have one more thing. I have to mention this stock open because a lot of there's some big investors getting involved in this thing now. And you look at the options market, and there's a lot of interest in this. It was up 39% on Friday. 58% for the week. And like I said, I normally don't talk about stocks below $10. This one definitely is, it warrants some notice here. A couple weeks ago, or the week of July 11th, which is more than a couple weeks ago, it was up 27%. And that should have, piqued some interest. And then it went up 189% the following week. And then a 13% gain. Then a digested gain, 17%, and then 7% pullbacks. 2 weeks ago it was up 62%, and last week 58%. That is not to be ignored, Dan. There's something going on here. There's some big investors, like I say, getting involved with this one, and they liken it to Carvana, which had this massive run. I mean, if it could do something like that, yeah, $3 to what, 357. I'm all in. If Open can do something like that, heck, if it could just do 1/10 of that. Yeah, Open Door. I mean, they have sales. If you look at it, it's not like a meme stock like GameStop, whatever. They do have sales. They have, they're losing money. Yeah, losing money. No return on equity, no cash flow, but just a speculative play that some obviously big money is piling in here, and definitely one to watch. Anything up, 189% in a week, and 2 weeks ago was what, 62, and then last week 58. You got to watch that. In fact, you got to take action on that. I didn't say that. You do whatever you want, but that looks like it's going to move higher to me. Anyway, thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up.